The first time I saw the boy, he was standing in the middle of Mallory's field, barefoot and staring straight at the sun. His skin was gray, not like he was sick, but like he was made of ash. His eyes were solid black, wide open and unblinking. And though the wind whipped the wheat around him, his hair and clothes didn't move an inch. I was only 8. I told my mother. She slapped the words right out of my mouth. "You never speak of things you don't understand," she hissed, then locked me in my room with salt at the windowsill and iron nails beneath the bed. I cried myself to sleep to the sound of her whispering prayers in a language I didn't know. The next morning, the field was gone, burned to blackened stumps. No fire trucks, no smoke, just gone. They said it was lightning even though the sky had been clear. Nobody mentioned the boy. In Dagger Brook, we didn't talk about strange things. We obeyed the rules. We never swam after dusk, never whistled in the woods, never touched the statue of the veiled woman in the churchyard, and we sure as hell didn't ask questions about the people who went missing. But I always remembered that boy, how he stood too still, how the air seemed to hum around him, like something waiting to break loose. Years passed. I left town, tried to forget, built a life somewhere that didn't smell like candle wax and wet stone. And then last week, my mother died. When I returned for the funeral, Mallory's field had grown back, and the boy was still there, barefoot and smiling, like he'd been waiting just for me. I pulled over and sat in the car, engine ticking, heart pounding like a fist inside my chest. He was still in the same spot, the boy, still barefoot, still smiling, but now he was pointing at me. The fields surrounding Mallory's had always been empty, broken fences and dirt roads cutting across forgotten farmland. But today the wheat stood tall again, golden and unbroken, waving gently beneath an overcast sky. It looked too perfect, too untouched, like a painting. I stepped out. The air was heavy. It smelled like wet soil and old iron. A fly buzzed past my ear. I swatted it, but it kept circling. The boy didn't move. He just stood there with that same hollow grin. Someone called my name. I jumped. Eli. It was Sheriff Marnes, older now, face carved with deeper lines, but still carrying that same disapproving scowl. "You planning to stand in the middle of the damn road all day?" I turned, blinking. When I looked back, the boy was gone. I glanced over at Marnes. "Did you see him?" "See who?" There was a boy in the field. He held up a hand. "Eli, you've been gone 20 years. People around here don't entertain ghost stories anymore, especially not now. Your mama's barely cold." I shut my mouth, just like old times. At the house, the porch sagged more than I remembered. Ivy strangled the shutters, and the front door creaked like it was warning me not to enter. Inside, everything smelled of lavender and mold. The walls were yellowed. Her prayer beads still hung by the kitchen window. On the dining table sat an envelope addressed to me in her shaky handwriting. No stamp, just my name, Eli. Inside, one sentence: "Don't go near the field after dark." The envelope was sealed with black wax, unusual for my mother, who never bothered with anything fancy. She hated drama. Said it invited the wrong kind of attention, but the wax was stamped with a symbol I didn't recognize, a circle with 3 jagged slashes through the center. I read the note again. "Don't go near the field after dark." I checked the clock on the wall, 5:42 p.m. The sun was already low. The days were shorter now. In the hallway, dust shimmered in golden beams slicing through cracked blinds. Every step stirred memories, birthday candles, arguments, my mother praying in the living room while clutching a chipped rosary like a lifeline. In her bedroom, things were untouched. Her hairbrush lay beside her glasses. Her journal sat on the bedside table, halfway beneath a bottle of sleeping pills. I opened it. The last entry was written 3 days ago. He's back, just like in 72. The same smile, the same eyes. I tried to warn them, but no one listens. Not anymore. The names are appearing again. It's starting. Flipping further back, I found pages filled with names. Some scratched out violently, others circled. Some I recognized from town. Jonas Miller, Agatha Trent, Marcus Greeley. They were all dead. One name made my stomach knot. Eli Whitaker. My name circled twice. Behind me the hallway creaked. I froze, every hair on my neck standing straight. A whisper brushed my ear. Not words, just breath. I spun around. Empty. My reflection in the mirror across the room looked pale, confused, except for the eyes. For a second they looked all black, like his. I slammed the journal shut. The boy wasn't just in the field, he was in the house. That night, sleep never came. The house groaned around me like it was breathing, old wood and deeper things shifting beneath the surface. I lay in my childhood bed, staring at the ceiling, listening, the air was too still, too warm. No breeze, no crickets, not even the distant bark of a dog. Just silence. And then the whispers started. Faint at first, like wind beneath the floorboards. But as the minutes ticked by, they grew clearer. Dozens of voices, layered, urgent, frantic. Names. They were repeating names. I pressed my ear to the floor. Eli, Eli, Eli. The whispering stopped. Then, knock, knock, knock. 3 sharp raps from underneath me, from inside the crawl space. I shot up, heart pounding. This wasn't just creaky pipes or imagination. Something was beneath the house. I grabbed the flashlight from my nightstand and crept through the hall. The floor moaned under my weight, every step louder than I remembered. Down in the kitchen, I unlocked the back door and stepped out barefoot onto the dew-soaked grass. The entrance to the crawl space sat behind a stack of rotting firewood. I pulled it aside and lifted the panel. Something scurried back into the dark. I aimed the flashlight. At first I saw only dust and spiderwebs, then scratches in the dirt. Dozens of them, all carved into the packed earth beneath the house. Names again, mine included. But they weren't written randomly. They were in a circle, surrounding a crude symbol. 3 jagged slashes inside a ring, just like the wax seal. Suddenly my flashlight dimmed, then died. And in the pitch black, something whispered right beside my ear. She knew too much, Eli, just like you. I slammed the panel shut and ran inside. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning I drove straight to the old church. It sat at the edge of Dagger Brook like a relic from another world. Gray stone swallowed by ivy, bell tower leaning slightly as if exhausted. I hadn't stepped inside since I was 14, not since the night Father Callahan collapsed mid-sermon, clutching his chest, eyes fixed on the back pew like he saw something no one else could. They buried him the next day. No autopsy, just silence. The inside smelled like candle smoke and mildew. The pews were empty. The stained glass windows bled muted reds and blues onto the dusty floor. At the front, near the altar, stood the statue of the veiled woman, 10 feet tall, arms outstretched, face hidden behind a sculpted curtain of stone. Everyone in town was warned, never touch her, but I had to know. I stepped closer. Her hands were weather-worn, the stone fingertips stained darker than the rest, like they'd been handled just once by something unclean. I reached out, hesitated, then brushed my fingers along the edge of her veil. A sharp, static jolt pulsed up my arm. The church went cold. Behind me, a voice whispered, low and brittle, "You shouldn't be here." I turned, heart racing. A woman stood in the aisle, mid-60s, long gray braid, holding a bundle of herbs in one hand and a bell in the other. "Eli Whitaker," she said. "Your mother was a fool to stay. Who are you?" "I'm what's left of the protection." She looked toward the statue. "She touched it too, didn't she?" I nodded. The woman sighed. "Then it's already begun. The curse isn't coming back." She looked me dead in the eyes. It never left. The woman's name was Lillian Crow, and she lived in the woods just past the cemetery, alone, off-grid, and rumored to be a witch when I was a kid. Now, I wasn't so quick to dismiss the whispers. She walked me back to her cabin in silence, the bell in her hand clinking softly with every step. The trees grew unnaturally dense the deeper we went, their branches twisted like arthritic fingers, blocking most of the sunlight. "You were born under the black root moon," she said suddenly. I blinked. What does that mean? It means your name was always going to show up on that list. We reached her cabin, a sagging structure made of dark wood and bone chimes that clattered in the still air. She ushered me inside, where bundles of dried herbs hung from the ceiling and the fireplace burned without smoke. On a table sat dozens of old photographs, townsfolk from every generation, some I recognized, others long gone. Each had a red X drawn across the face. "All these people," I began. "Marked," she said, "by the thing that lives beneath your town." I swallowed. "You mean the curse?" "No," she said, eyes narrowing. "I mean the thing. The curse is just how it keeps balance, rules to follow, traditions to honor. You break them, it notices. You touch it." Her voice dropped. "And it follows you." I pulled the journal from my coat and set it on the table. She flipped through it quickly. "She kept better records than I expected," Lillian muttered. Then she looked up, eyes sharp. "Did you touch the ground, where the symbol was?" I hesitated. "Yes." She stood abruptly and threw salt at my feet. "Then we don't have much time. It's already inside you." I stared at the salt Lillian had scattered across the floor like it might suddenly ignite. "What do you mean it's inside me?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she went to a cupboard, pulled out a jar of black oil, and smeared a thick line across my forehead. It smelled like burnt sage and old blood. "You invited it in the moment you stepped into that circle," she said. "That mark in the earth, it's not just a symbol, it's a seal, a mouth, and you walked straight into its breath." I felt suddenly sick. Lillian led me to a mirror. "Look." I did. At first, I just saw myself, pale, shaken, a little older than I remembered, but then movement, subtle, beneath the skin of my cheek, a twitch, like something was crawling just under the surface. I stumbled back. No, that's not possible." "It's always possible in Dagger Brook," she said. "We bury things here, but they don't stay buried." She handed me a small pouch made of animal hide. "Wolfsbane, grave moss, bone dust. Keep this on you. It won't stop it, but it'll slow it." I clenched the pouch like a lifeline. "I need to understand what it wants," I said. Lillian sat, eyes tired. "It doesn't want. It waits. It latches onto bloodlines, families that know too much. Break the old rules, it comes closer. Speak its name, it listens. But the moment you're marked, it remembers, and it's patient." I looked down at the pouch in my hand. It pulsed, faintly warm, like a heartbeat. "What happens if I stay?" She hesitated. "You'll become like the others. And if I leave," she met my eyes, "it'll follow you. That's the final rule." I left Lillian's cabin just before dusk, the pouch pressed against my chest like armor. The sun was low, bleeding red across the treetops. I walked quickly, glancing over my shoulder every few steps, heart thudding like I was being followed, though I saw no one. Back in town, I pass. At the church, the diner, the old library. All looked the same as they had 20 years ago, but quieter, hollow. At the funeral home, I found the door unlocked. Inside, everything smelled like lilies and embalming fluid. My mother's casket sat alone in a dim room, lit by 2 flickering wall sconces. No chairs, no visitors, just her. There had been no service. A folded paper rested on her chest, held in place by her lifeless hands. I stepped forward, suddenly lightheaded. My mother looked different. Not peaceful, tense, like she died mid-prayer. Her lips were dry and cracked, but something was etched into them. Letters, carved faintly into the skin. I leaned closer. 3 slashes inside a ring. The same cursed symbol. I stumbled back, breath catching in my throat, and grabbed the note from her hands. I did what I could, but the roots go deeper than I thought. It doesn't die, Eli. It waits. Don't trust the ground. Suddenly, a thud echoed from beneath the floor. Then another, like something heavy shifting just below. I backed away slowly, my eyes fixed on the wooden floorboards. A hairline crack ran beneath the casket, new and widening. The light flickered, the room went cold, and from the shadow beneath her coffin, I heard the unmistakable sound of breathing. Ragged, wet, not hers, something else. I turned and ran. My mother wasn't resting. She was sealing something in. I didn't stop running until I reached the edge of town, lungs burning, shoes caked with dirt and leaves. The funeral home's lights still glowed faintly behind me, but I couldn't bring myself to look back. The breathing I heard beneath her coffin, it wasn't a trick of stress or grief. It had weight, presence. It felt aware. I found myself standing at the edge of Mallory's field again. The wheat waved gently under a purple sky, too uniform, too perfect, like something pretending to be alive. And in the center, the boy stood again. This time, closer. I should have turned away, gone back to the safety of locked doors and salt lines, but something pulled at me, deeper than curiosity. A whisper under the skin, not words, just a direction. Come closer. I stepped onto the field. The wheat didn't part normally. It recoiled, twitching away from me like it feared contact. Each step made the air heavier. The wind dropped. No birds, no insects, just a low hum rising from the earth itself. I reached the spot where the boy had stood, now empty. The ground beneath was blackened, faintly cracked like overbaked clay. I knelt, hesitated, then pressed my fingers to the soil. It was warm and breathing. The dirt rose and fell subtly beneath my palm, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. Suddenly, a sharp sting shot through my fingertips. I yanked my hand back, blood beating at the tips. From beneath the soil, something moved. I staggered backward, heart slamming in my ribs, and that whisper returned, closer now, almost audible. You're the last root. You were always meant to feed it. I ran from the field, fingers bleeding, head spinning, and behind me, the wheat began to laugh. I locked every door and window when I got home, then poured salt across every threshold, just like my mother used to. It felt childish, desperate, but I did it anyway. The pouch Lillian gave me burned way against my chest, almost uncomfortably so, like it was reacting to something nearby. I went to the bathroom to wash the blood from my fingertips, but as soon as the water touched my skin, pain flared, deep and hard. I looked. 3 tiny cuts ran across my fingers, perfectly spaced in the shape of the cursed symbol. Not scratches, carvings, like something had written on me. I wrapped my hand and walked into the hall, breathing hard. That's when I heard it. A slow dragging sound behind the walls. Not mice, not settling wood. It was rhythmic, like something crawling sideways through the old plaster. I pressed my ear against the hallway wall, whispering. Soft, urgent, layered voices like the ones beneath the floorboards. One rose above the others. A woman's voice, familiar. It was my mother. You broke the line, Eli. You weren't supposed to come back. I yanked away from the wall, chest tight. No, you're dead. Then I noticed the wallpaper. Names had started to appear beneath it. They weren't written. They were bubbling up from beneath the surface, letters rising like scars. One by one, I saw them emerge. Jonas Miller, Agatha Trent, Marcus Greeley, my mother, and then Eli Whitaker, carved twice. The lights flickered, and I heard footsteps upstairs, slow, deliberate. I wasn't alone. Grabbing my flashlight and the journal, I moved quietly toward the staircase, each step creaking louder than the last. Whatever I had stirred, it was already inside the house. And it knew my name. The stairs groaned under my weight like they were warning me. I paused halfway up, flashlight shaking in my hand. The air smelled different up here, sweet and rotten, like old flowers left too long in water. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched into darkness. Doors lined each side. Everyone was shut, except mine. My old bedroom door stood half open. Something waited inside. I felt it, heavy, patient, breathing like a wolf behind a curtain. I took a step forward. The journal under my arm grew heavier with each movement, its pages buzzing faintly against my side like a hive. My flashlight flickered. Then from inside the room, a soft giggle. childlike. I stopped. No. That laugh, I remembered it. It was mine, from old home videos, from birthday parties long before the town turned dark. I pushed the door open. My room was almost exactly as I'd left it. Posters curling at the corners, model airplanes hanging from fishing wire, bed still unmade. And on the bed sat a figure. Not a child, not me. It had my face, but the eyes were pitch black, mouth split wide into a too large grin. Its skin was gray, stretched too tightly, and its limbs were wrong, too long, elbows bent the wrong way. "Hi, Eli," it said in my voice. "I missed us." I slammed the door shut and stumbled back. The floor beneath me shivered, like something massive was turning over beneath the house. Lillian's warning echoed in my mind. "It's already inside you." I turned and ran downstairs. I had to get out. I had to. Glass shattered in the kitchen. Something was coming through. And for the first time in my life, I realized Dagger Brook wasn't cursed. It was possessed. The crash of glass echoed through the house like a scream. I bolted down the stairs 2 at a time, heart hammering, flashlight beam bouncing wildly off the walls. When I hit the bottom step, I froze. The kitchen wall was dark. Too dark. The overhead bulb buzzed and flickered, casting long, crawling shadows along the linoleum floor. The back window had shattered inward. Shards of glass glinted like teeth on the tile. But no footprints, no blood. Just a thick trail of dark soil leading from the broken window to the center of the kitchen. The dirt was fresh, wet, like it had just rained inside. I took a cautious step forward, the journal clutched tightly in one hand. Then I saw them. 3 slashes, carved deep into the refrigerator door. The cursed symbol again. It was branding everything now. My fingers, the walls, even the damn appliances. A soft, rhythmic tapping started. I turned. The faucet. Water was dripping slowly, even though the handles were off, but the droplets were red. I stepped closer. My stomach dropped. It wasn't water. It was blood. I staggered back, nearly slipping on the mud-caked floor, and heard something creak behind me, closer than before. I turned, raising the flashlight, and saw a face at the window. Not the boy. Something older, sharper, skin like bark, lips stitched shut with black thread. It didn't blink, just pressed its forehead against the glass and watched me. Then, slowly, it smiled. I stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. The light flickered again. When it came back on, the window was empty. But the trail of dirt, it was leading upstairs. The thing wasn't outside anymore. It was in the house, and it was climbing. I didn't wait. I ran to the front door, yanked it open, only to find the world outside wrapped in thick, unmoving fog, dense as wool. It swallowed everything. Street, trees. Even the church steeple was gone. I stepped out anyway, only a foot. The fog curled around my ankles like fingers. Then I heard it, something large breathing just beyond the mist, deep, slow, wet. I stepped back inside and slammed the door, trapped. The dirt trail on the stairs was fresher now, damp and clinging. Whatever it wasn't hiding anymore. It wanted me to follow. I didn't want to, but I climbed anyway. Upstairs, the air was colder. My breath came out in small, shivering clouds. Every light bulb flickered dim yellow, barely enough to see. The trail didn't lead to my bedroom this time. It led to the end of the hall, to the nursery. That door had stayed shut since I was a child. My sister, Ruth, was born still and buried quietly. My parents never spoke of her. I reached out, heart pounding, and turned the handle. The door creaked open. The room was pristine, crib in the center, old rocking chair, toys lined up neatly along the walls, untouched by dust. The air smelled like baby powder and something sour, something spoiled. In the crib, something moved. I stepped closer. There was a figure wrapped in cloth, face hidden, barely shifting. It was breathing, softly. Then it whispered, in a voice like dry leaves. They buried her too shallow. The cloth unraveled on its own. revealing a rotted doll with human eyes. They blinked. I stumbled back, trembling. On the wall behind the crib, 3 words had appeared. "She remembers you." I slammed the nursery door shut and backed away, heart thrashing in my chest like a trapped animal. "She remembers you." The words burned behind my eyes. I never knew Ruth. She died before I was old enough to form memories. At least that's what I was always told. But something in that room felt familiar. Not just eerie, personal. Back in my old bedroom, I pulled the journal from my coat and flipped toward the end. Tucked between the last few pages, I found something I hadn't noticed before. A smaller, folded sheet. Handwritten, not by my mother. Different ink, older paper. Ruth didn't die of sickness. She was taken. It needed blood. A sacrifice. They made their choice. But her spirit lingered. She marked the next child. That was you. I sat down, hands shaking. I was never supposed to live. I was supposed to replace her. Downstairs, a door slammed. Heavy footsteps echoed through the floorboards. Not footsteps. Hooves. The whole house groaned like it was sinking into the earth. Plaster cracked. The lights dimmed. I grabbed the pouch Lillian gave me and held it tight, praying to gods I didn't believe in. The sound stopped. Then, laughter. Small, childlike. I looked up and nearly screamed. Ruth stood in the hallway. Not a doll, not a dream. A girl, gray-skinned, eyes sunken, hair matted with soil. She clutched something in her tiny hands. A bone, snapped in half. She tilted her head and whispered, "We can trade places now." Behind her, the walls pulsed like a throat swallowing air. Something ancient was rising. Ruth took a step toward me, eyes glowing faintly red. And I realized she'd never left. She'd been waiting to come home. I stumbled backward until my spine hit the far wall. "No," I whispered. "You're not real." But Ruth didn't vanish. She moved closer, barefoot, her skin crackling like dry paper. Her presence was heavy, grief, rage, longing, all stitched together in a child's form. The air around her shimmered, warped like heat rising off pavement. "I waited," she said, her voice layered, one part child, one part something else. "They promised me peace if I gave them you." My chest tightened. "They lied," she added. "Now we both burn." She extended the broken bone like an offering. I gripped the pouch in my hand, yanked it open, and tossed the contents at her. Salt, ashes, sage. The materials flared into sparks midair. Ruth screamed. But it wasn't a sound of pain. It was fury, betrayal. The screams splintered into inhuman frequencies that rattled the glass. The hallway twisted, literally folded inward on itself, like paper creasing in reverse. Then she vanished. The silence was worse. I turned, stumbling into the hallway. My feet squelched in something wet. I didn't look down. I ran, past old photos, warped walls, doors that shouldn't be open. Downstairs, the air was darker, thicker. Lillian stood in the kitchen, a knife in one hand, her eyes white and unblinking. "You were always meant for this," she said calmly. "Born under blood moon, touched by the hollow." "I'm not part of your curse," I shouted. "You are the curse," she said. "We raised you to be the offering." The ground beneath me cracked like eggshells. From the cellar door, thick black vines unfurled like fingers reaching for my legs. The house groaned once more, deeper now. It wanted something, and I was no longer sure escape was even possible. The vines curled around my ankles, cold and pulsing like veins under skin. I kicked, twisted, my boots slipping in the dark sludge spreading across the floor. "Let go!" I screamed, lunging for the countertop. Lillian didn't move. "You'll only make it worse," she said. "If you fight it, it'll take more." The vines tightened, dragging me toward the cellar door. The wood split down the middle, revealing a gaping maw of shadow beneath. It wasn't a basement, it was a void. I saw no stairs, only endless blackness. Whispers rose from within, voices that sounded like mine, twisted and broken. "Stop!" I shouted. "Tell me what this place is." She tilted her head. "It's not a place," she said. "It's a memory, a debt, and we've all been paying it for generations." The vines yanked hard. I fell, half my body already pulled inside. Then something reached out from the blackness. Not vines, not human. It was long and thin, like a spider's limb carved from bone and shadow. It touched my chest, and I remembered things I'd never lived. A ritual, a blood moon, a screaming baby, me. "No," I whispered. It fed on memories, on pain. That was the hollow. It didn't live here. It was here, a wound in the world, sucking everything warm and real into its cold hunger. Suddenly, Ruth's voice echoed from inside. "You still have time." I reached for the locket around my neck, my mother's. I ripped it free and hurled it into the void. A blast of light erupted. The vines shrieked and recoiled. I scrambled free. When I looked up, Lillian was gone. Only the cellar door remained, still open, still hungry. And the house whispered one word behind me. Return. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt it watching. The hollow, pulsing just beneath the floorboards like a second heart. By morning, I found myself back at the edge of the woods, staring into the trees. The curse wasn't gone. If anything, I'd disturbed it. The town still held its breath. Shadows seemed to follow faster, and Lillian was missing. At the library, the silence was unnatural. Dust hung still in the air like it feared to settle. In the archive room, I flipped through brittle papers and town ledgers until my hands ached. Then I found it, an old photograph. Lillian, Ruth, my mother. They were girls, maybe 10 years old, standing in front of the same house. Behind them, faint and almost hidden in shadow, was the hollow, a black smear in the earth. On the back, written in careful handwriting, "We made a promise. Only one can remember." My blood ran cold. They had known. All of them. My mother hadn't left the town. She'd been part of it, of this. Suddenly, something scraped across the floor behind me. I turned. A girl stood in the doorway, drenched in rain despite the clear sky outside. Her eyes were hollow, her voice thinner than air. "You let it wake up. Who are you?" But I already knew. "Emily," I whispered. She stepped forward, holding the locket I'd thrown into the hollow. "You were supposed to return it, not throw it away. Now it wants more." The lights flickered. Every book on the shelf fluttered as if breathing. I backed away slowly, heart pounding. Emily smiled. Not a child's smile, but something ancient. "You broke the promise," she whispered. "Now the town remembers." The town bell rang once. It hadn't rung in decades, not since the fire that took the chapel. Yet its echo rolled over Ridgewood like thunder, waking birds from trees and sending dogs into a frenzy. I ran outside. Doors were creaking open up and down the street. People stood in their nightclothes, staring toward the woods, toward the hollow. They were remembering. Mrs. Allen, the grocer's wife, was weeping on her front step, muttering names no one had heard in years. Mr. Dewhurst, who never left his porch, stood barefoot in the middle of the road, whispering, "It's coming back." Even the air was changing. The sky had turned a sickly yellow-gray, and leaves on the trees wilted in place. The birds circled low, confused and shrieking. I saw Ruth stumbling toward me. Her hands trembled, eyes bloodshot. "You shouldn't have spoken to her," she rasped. "Emily?" I asked. "She's not Emily anymore. She's what we buried." What was she? An offering. I felt the words slam into me like a wave. My stomach turned. "Your mother. She chose silence. I chose survival. Lillian tried to fight it and paid the price. I couldn't breathe. What did I do?" "You broke the seal," Ruth said. "You let it start again. The curse wasn't just superstition. It was containment." Behind her, the fog began creeping in from the woods, thick and low to the ground, whispering like it carried voices. A child's laughter echoed from within it. Then another bell chime. Ruth turned sharply. "We have to go. Now." "To where?" "To the chapel ruins. It's the only place left that might hold it." As we ran, the town behind us started whispering in unison. One voice split between 100 mouths, and it knew my name. We ran down broken streets, slick with dew and ash. The fog rolled behind us like a living tide, swallowing houses, trees, people. I heard names being whispered. Mine, Ruth's, my mother's. Each syllable carried weight like a rope tightening around my throat. The chapel ruins stood at the edge of town, cloaked in ivy and shadow. Only the stone foundation remained, the rest long since burned away. Blackened timbers jutted like broken ribs from the ground. "This is where it started," Ruth said, panting. "The pact, the offering, all of it. What do we do now?" She reached into her coat and pulled out a cracked leather book, the same one I'd seen my mother hide years ago. Its pages were stiff with age, covered in handwritten incantations, symbols, warnings. "She wrote this," Ruth said. "Your mother. She tried to stop it, but she couldn't finish the rite. You have to." "Why me?" "Because you're not cursed like we were. You were born after the seal. The entity doesn't fully recognize you. Yet." I knelt beside the charred altar stone, flipping through pages. One phrase kept repeating. The voice must be returned to the hollow. A cold gust swept over us. From the fog came figures, children, pale and smiling, with empty eyes. Emily stood among them, her mouth stitched closed, blood crusted at the corners. She lifted one hand and pointed at me. "You have to speak the rite," Ruth said. "Do it now, before..." A scream split the air. Ruth flew backward, her body hitting the ground with a crack. The book fell from my hands, pages fluttering in the wind. The children stepped closer, mouths beginning to open, despite the stitches, and they started to sing in unison. It was my lullaby. The melody was wrong, warped, fractured, sung in voices too old and hollow to be children's. Yet somehow, it was unmistakably my lullaby, the one my mother sang when storms rattled the windows and nightmares clawed at the edges of sleep. I clutched the book with trembling hands, flipping pages until the rite revealed itself, a binding prayer, a severance between the voice of the hollow and its earthly tether. But the last line, it was missing, torn clean. The fog thickened, pressing against my skin like wet gauze. The children circled closer. Emily stood just inches from me now, her stitched mouth trembling as if trying to scream. I reached toward her, not knowing why. The stitches unraveled. Her mouth opened, wide, impossibly wide, and from it poured a voice I knew wasn't hers. "You are the key," it said in tones like rusted chains dragging across bone. "Born outside the circle, flesh unmarked, voice untouched." I tried to speak the rite, fumbling syllables as wind howled through the chapel's remains. The figures shrieked in protest, their bodies twitching with every sacred word I uttered. Then I saw Ruth, broken, still breathing. "Finish it!" she screamed. The book began to burn in my hands, flame eating ink, curling paper. I shouted the words I remembered, improvising the missing line with the only thing that felt true. The voice returns to silence, and silence seals the hollow. The world convulsed. Light surged from the altar, slamming into the children, into Emily, lifting them skyward in a blast of white and shadow. Their screams became wind, then silence. The fog broke, and suddenly, I was alone in the ruins, ash drifting like snow. Only one sound remained, the faint echo of that lullaby fading into the woods. I stood in the chapel's remains, its warped beams scorched and split, the altar smoldering. The fog had receded, revealing a forest that looked wrong. Trees bent slightly inward, as if leaning to hear. The air pulsed with residual energy, charged, brittle. Ruth lay crumpled near the altar, face pale, eyes fluttering. I rushed to her side, brushing ash from her skin. "You're alive," I whispered. "Barely." She smiled weakly. "You did it," she croaked. "You sealed it. The hollow's hunger is gone." But her smile faded. "Not forever." I froze. "What do you mean?" She pointed to the torn binding, the last page now reduced to cinders. "It was never meant to be improvised. The rite only holds while memory endures. When it's forgotten, it returns." In the distance, the forest groaned. I helped her up, and together we limped back through the trees. The deeper we went, the more normal the woods seemed. No more whispers, no more shadows slinking between branches, just bird song and breeze. By the time we reached the edge of Black Hollow, morning had broken. Light spilled over the hills. I saw the old sign again, weather-worn but intact. No more crosses, no more blood. But something new caught my eye. On the chapel's front door, now barely standing in the clearing, a child's handprint, fresh, red, small. Ruth didn't see it, or pretended not to. She turned to me, voice frail. "You must remember. Tell it. Write it. If the hollow is ever forgotten again." She didn't need to finish. I nodded. "I will." But even now, as I write these words, I feel the memory slipping, like smoke through my fingers. And in the distance, just past the tree line, I swear I hear a child softly humming. 3 days have passed since we left Black Hollow behind. Ruth sleeps most of the time now, her body healing slowly, but her mind drifts, haunted. She talks in her sleep, muttering names I won't recognize. Sometimes she laughs. Sometimes she screams. I haven't left her side. We're staying in a small roadside motel a few towns over. I keep the journal hidden beneath my bed, wrapped in an old towel. I haven't dared open it again, not after what I saw last night. There was fog outside our window, just a thin layer, but in the middle of the night, I heard it, that rhythmic knocking again, soft, deliberate. I looked outside expecting wind or some local animal, but there were figures, 7 of them, standing just beyond the parking lot where the fog thickened unnaturally. They didn't move, just watched, their heads tilted slightly, all at the same angle. As if they were listening, I blinked, and they were gone. This morning, I found a smear of red across the window. Not blood, something thicker, darker. A symbol etched into the glass with a trembling finger, a spiral. Ruth woke up gasping minutes later, whispering, "They've seen you now." She won't explain what that means. I feel different, heavier, like I'm being followed by something I can't see, something not bound by time or distance. I tried to check the news, see if anything happened back in Black Hollow, but it's like the town never existed. No mention online, no records. Even maps show nothing but forest where it once stood, and yet I remember every detail. They want me to forget. But I won't, even if it means they follow me forever, even if it means they come again tonight. I'll remember, and I'll keep writing. Tonight, I finally spoke to someone who might understand. The motel is nearly empty, only 3 cars in the lot. I went to get ice and saw a woman standing just outside room 6, smoking a cigarette. Her eyes were sunken, hair messy like she hadn't slept in days. She watched me like she'd been expecting me. "You've seen them," she said quietly. I didn't answer. She stepped closer, flicked ash into the gravel. "The ones in the fog. They follow people who disturb the old places. People like us." She lifted her sleeve. Her forearm was covered in spirals. Not tattoos, scars. Dozens of them, burned or carved into her flesh. "They mark us," she whispered. "To track, to remember. We carry pieces of them now." I felt sick. She told me she'd been in a town just like Black Hollow years ago. Different name, same story. She and her brother went exploring. He vanished. She's been running ever since. Said they appear whenever she stays too long in one place. I asked her how to stop them. "You can't," she said. "But you can slow them down. Keep moving. Burn the book. Don't speak their names aloud. Never draw the spiral." Before I could ask more, she turned and went back inside room 6. When I returned to our room, Ruth was sitting up in bed, her eyes wide. "Did she talk to you?" she asked, trembling. I nodded. "She's not real," Ruth whispered. "They send her. She's one of them now." I rushed back to room 6. The door was wide open. Empty. No bags, no smell of smoke, no sign anyone had ever been there. Only a spiral drawn on the bathroom mirror. In blood. Ruth wouldn't stop shaking. We sat in silence. The spiral on the mirror burned into my memory. I tried wiping it off, but it smeared like thick, wet paint. No one else at the motel seemed to have seen the woman. The clerk swore room 6 hadn't been rented in weeks. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 2:17 a.m., the old motel TV flickered on by itself. No remote nearby, no power surge, just snow, gray static and white noise, crackling loud in the darkness. I reached to turn it off, but something held me back. In the blur of static, I saw movement, a shape. At first, it looked like a silhouette. Then it leaned forward, a face, hollow-eyed with a jaw that seemed to stretch unnaturally wide. Its skin was rawn, tight, pale, and pulsing like it was breathing. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I only stared. It didn't speak. But I heard something inside my head. A whisper layered with voices, male, female, old, young. You opened the way. I stumbled back. Ruth sat bolt upright, screaming, "Turn it off! Turn it off!" I yanked the cord from the wall. The screen went black. The silence that followed was worse than the static. Ruth was sobbing, clutching her knees. "They're close now. It's almost done. They're calling." She pointed to the floor. Another spiral had appeared beneath the TV stand. This one was moving, twisting slowly, like it was alive, burning itself into the carpet. We packed our things in 5 minutes. As we peeled out of the motel parking lot, I looked back. All the room doors were open, every one of them. And in each doorway stood a figure, watching us go, unmoving, smiling. We didn't speak for hours. The road stretched endlessly ahead, a ribbon of cracked asphalt cutting through pine forest and fog. Ruth sat beside me, hunched forward, muttering prayers I didn't recognize, foreign syllables spoken in a voice that didn't sound like hers. Around noon, we stopped at a remote gas station off Route 46. The place looked abandoned, no cars, no attendant, but the lights inside were on. We needed gas and answers. Inside, the air was stale. A dusty radio behind the counter crackled softly, classical music warped by static. Then it stopped. A voice replaced it, a man's voice, calm, familiar. "You're almost there," it said. "Don't let her deceive you." I spun to look at Ruth, but she was gone. I ran back outside. She stood at the edge of the woods, barefoot now, eyes wide, staring at something in the trees. I followed her gaze. There, in a perfect circle, hung dozens of animal skulls. Deer, coyote, fox, strung from branches by rotting sinew. Beneath them, a ring of ash scorched the forest floor. Ruth stepped toward it. I grabbed her wrist. "No, tell me what this is." She looked up at me, and for a moment, she wasn't Ruth. Her eyes were black, mouth twitching in a way no humans should. Then she blinked, and her expression changed, terror flooding back. She collapsed into me. "I don't know who I am anymore," she whispered. From deep in the woods, a sound echoed, like hooves, but heavier, slower. Thump, thump, thump. The trees began to bend, like something massive was passing through them. We backed away. Ruth whispered, "It's here. The thing I was supposed to find. The thing that's been hunting us." I realized then, maybe we hadn't been hunting anything. Maybe it was always hunting us. We ran, through brittle brush and moss-slicked logs, Ruth clutching my arm like a lifeline. Behind us, the trees groaned, not with wind, but with weight. Something massive was moving just out of sight, its breath a low rasp that scraped the inside of my skull. Every step felt like sinking into nightmare. We broke through the woods into a clearing. An old hunting shack stood crooked on stone stilts. I remembered it from decades ago. My father brought me here once, after we tracked a buck for 2 days and lost it to a storm. We stumbled inside and barred the door. The windows were boarded up, dust thick enough to choke on. I searched for anything useful. An old shotgun, 2 shells, a rusted hunting knife, a canteen half full of stale water. Ruth was pacing, mumbling again in that strange, low tongue. "You're scaring me," I said. She froze. "I think it wants me to remember," she whispered. "The thing out there, It's inside my blood. I feel it. It's like waking up from a dream that's lasted 30 years. Before I could respond, the walls shuddered. A long, wet breath slid through the cracks in the wood. The thing had found us. I peeked through a gap in the boards. At first, I saw nothing but dark. Then, a shape moved. 7 feet tall, antlers too wide for any doorway. Its body was wrong, twisting, crawling with veins like black vines, eyes like lanterns, burning with recognition. It wasn't just a monster. It knew me. It had waited. Ruth knelt on the floor and began drawing a symbol with ash from the fireplace. A circle. A rune. "This is how it ends," she whispered. "No," I said, loading the shotgun. "This is where we fight." The creature circled the cabin slowly, its footsteps like trees snapping under pressure. I could feel it, its weight pressing into the soil, disturbing the air itself. Ruth continued carving the symbol into the ash, her fingers trembling but precise. "What is that?" I asked. "A binding mark," she said. "My grandmother used it once to hold something like this, but it needs a sacrifice to activate." "What kind of sacrifice?" She didn't answer. The cabin groaned again. Then came a wet thud. Something slammed against the side wall. Dust fell from the rafters. The shotgun felt too light in my hands, like a toy against a god. Ruth turned to me. "It won't kill it, but it'll stop it, long enough to escape." "I'm not leaving you," I said, but she was already moving, cutting a line across her palm, letting her blood spill into the center of the rune. The creature let out a cry, low and guttural, like mourning or rage. Its head crashed through the far wall. Splinters exploded inward. I fired both shells into its face. The blast knocked it back, but only for a moment. Its flesh hissed, burned, then healed, writhing like 1,000 worms beneath its skin. Ruth screamed the last words of the incantation, her voice echoing with something ancient. The rune burst into light. The creature froze, mid-lunge, its body convulsing as black tendrils shot from the symbol and wrapped around its limbs, binding it to the earth. Ruth collapsed, unconscious, pale. The cabin burned around us, fire licking up the walls from the blast. I grabbed her, threw the knife and empty gun into my pack, and ran through the back wall just before it all collapsed. The forest fell silent, but in my chest, I knew this wasn't over. We stumbled through the forest, Ruth slung over my shoulder like dead weight, her blood soaking into my jacket. Behind us, the burning cabin cast flickering shadows across the trees. But the fire felt small, insignificant, compared to the thing we had just faced. I didn't stop moving until my legs gave out. I collapsed by a fallen log, laid Ruth down gently. Her breathing was shallow, but there, her skin was cold. I checked my pack. 2 flares, some jerky, a canteen half full, and the journal. The pages were charred around the edges, but still legible. I flipped through, trying to find something, anything about what happened after the binding. There it was. Binding slows them, roots them to the world, but not forever. Blood wakes them, blood binds them, blood frees them. I stared at the words, heart pounding. Ruth's sacrifice had stopped the thing, yes, but had she also fed it? A sound, branches snapping behind me. I stood, knife in hand. Nothing moved, no wind, no birds, just the quiet, unnatural kind that settles before something terrible happens. Then Ruth stirred. "They're watching," she whispered. "The forest isn't just hiding them. It's alive because of them." "What do you mean?" Her eyes fluttered open. "It's not one thing, it's many. They came before language, before fire. My blood fed one. Others might wake." A shiver ran through me. She pointed toward the north. "There's an old ranger station. My grandfather wrote about it, steel and concrete. They can't breach it, we rest there." I helped her up. We moved slowly, the forest closing in again. Quiet, heavy, ancient. And behind us, in the burning distance, something moved in the smoke, something massive and grinning. The ranger station loomed like a forgotten fortress in the trees. Concrete, rusted steel, vines snaking up its frame, but intact. No windows broken, no sign of decay on the thick metal doors. It looked out of place, unnatural, like it didn't belong to this world, or time. We reached it just as the last of the light vanished behind the treetops. Ruth collapsed onto the stairs, breathing hard. I banged on the door, half hoping someone was inside. But no one answered, just the echo of my fists. I tried the handle. Locked. "Help me," Ruth croaked. Together we pried at the hinges until something gave. The door groaned open, revealing a stale, dust-filled interior, rows of steel lockers, a cracked map of the forest pinned to the wall, military cots, shelves stacked with old cans, rifles, flares. It was a fallout shelter. We dragged ourselves inside. I bolted the door shut behind us. Ruth lit a lantern. The soft glow danced across a chalkboard near the far wall, covered in strange symbols, circles, spirals, patterns that didn't belong in any language I knew. "I've seen these before," Ruth whispered. "In the journals. He called them locking runes. Said they hold back the roots of the old ones, but they fade. Then we need to redraw them," I said. She nodded, weakly. I found chalk in a drawer, handed it to her. Her hands trembled as she traced the lines, restoring what time had worn away. Outside, the forest shifted. Something brushed against the door. A low moan, long and wet, slithered through the cracks in the steel. We froze. "They know we're here," Ruth said. I tightened my grip on the rifle. "They do," I whispered. "But now we're ready." All night, the thing outside circled. We heard its breathing, wet, gurgling, thick with rot. It dragged across the outer walls, claws or limbs or something else entirely. Every few hours, it thumped the steel door like it was testing our resolve. Each time, Ruth would pause her drawings, listen, then continue marking the runes. I didn't sleep. I stood watch, rifle aimed at the door, heart hammering with every sound. At some point, the moaning changed, became voices, whispers, dozens of them. My mother's voice called from the forest, then Ben's, even Colin's. "Let us in," they whispered. "We're cold. We're lost. You left us." Ruth stuffed her ears with cloth. "Don't listen. It's trying to break you." But I couldn't help it. One voice in particular kept returning, clearer than the rest. "Hannah, please, Daddy," it cried. "I'm here. I'm outside. I'm scared." I felt myself moving toward the door. The rifle lowered. My hand reached for the latch. "No!" Ruth screamed, lunging at me. She slapped my face hard, snapping me back. I fell to the floor, panting, trembling. "It's not real," she said, gripping my shoulders. "They're never real." The whispers faded into hissing, then silence. Hours passed, then the door groaned. Metal strained, warped inward. Something pushed. Ruth redrew the runes faster, sweat streaking her face. I aimed the rifle at the door, certain it wouldn't hold. But just as the steel began to tear, the runes flared, glowing white. The door shuddered once, then everything went still. Dead quiet. I turned to Ruth. "Did it work?" She nodded slowly. "For now, but not forever." Because outside, the forest still waited. And so did the thing beneath it. After the door held, we didn't speak for a long time. Morning came dim and gray. The forest beyond the narrow windows looked unchanged, still, silent, almost mocking, but the presence, it was gone, for now. Ruth finished redrawing the last rune, then collapsed onto a crate, utterly spent. "We need to move," she said finally. "This place isn't a prison, it's bait." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She tossed me a folded map, edges frayed and stained with blood. "It's from one of the original survey teams," she explained, "before the base was ever built." I unfolded it. Red ink marked a network of tunnels beneath the facility. Some we knew, most we didn't. One particular chamber had been circled over and over, violently scratched at as if whoever drew it had gone mad. "What's down there?" Ruth hesitated. "I don't know, but I think it's where it came from." I studied the lines. The path wasn't direct. It wound through collapsed corridors, sealed-off labs, and maintenance shafts long forgotten. But it was a way forward. "We go there?" I asked. She nodded. "If we don't, it'll keep hunting. It doesn't sleep. It doesn't stop." I swallowed hard. "What if we don't come back?" Ruth met my eyes, calm and cold. "Then at least we'll die knowing the truth." We packed what little we had: 2 rifles, the map, Ruth's journal of runes, and a canteen. I hesitated at the door, listening one last time. The forest was still again, but I didn't trust it. We opened the back hatch. The metal groaned, letting in the heavy scent of moss, dirt, and something faintly metallic, like old blood. Then we stepped out, toward the tunnels, toward the thing that should never have been unearthed. The entrance was half collapsed, hidden beneath a crumbling outbuilding behind the supply depot. Vines had wrapped around the rusted steel hatch like veins on rotting skin. Ruth traced a protective rune across the frame before we pulled it open. A rush of cold, stale air hit us, like something exhaled from the dark. We descended. The ladder creaked under our weight, each step echoing into the abyss. The flashlight beams barely pierced the darkness, revealing mold-covered walls and pipes dripping with condensation. It smelled like rot, old chemicals, and something else. Something sour and ancient. We reached the bottom. The hallway stretched ahead, low, claustrophobic, lined with peeling hazard signs and forgotten crates. Ruth checked the map. Straight through, then down the maintenance shaft. I nodded. As we walked, our lights flickered. Shadows moved at the edge of our vision, not fast, but deliberate, watching. I kept my rifle raised, finger tight on the trigger. Ruth whispered something under her breath. A chant, maybe. The air pulsed with each word. We passed a shattered observation room. Inside, a glass tank lay in shards, its contents long gone. The floor was scorched black, like something had burned its way out. "We're close," she muttered. The walls here were marked, scratches in metal, like claws or bone had scraped along them. The deeper we went, the louder the humming became, a low frequency you didn't hear so much as feel, in your teeth, your spine, your skull. Then we reached it. A steel hatch sealed with 7 ancient locks, each one marked with a different rune. Ruth approached, trembling. "This is where they found it." I pressed my hand to the door. It was warm, and something on the other side was breathing. Ruth knelt before the hatch, fingers trembling as she traced the runes. "These seals aren't military," she said. "They're far older, from before written history." I stood back, weapon ready. "What happens if you open it?" She looked up, her eyes glassy. "It doesn't stay sealed forever. The base's power was built to keep it asleep. But now the systems are failing, and it's waking." With a deep breath, she began unlocking the seals, one by one. As each rune broke, the air grew colder, heavier, the humming intensified. My vision swam, and shapes twisted at the corners of my mind. Alien forms, impossible geometries that made my stomach churn. The 4th lock dissolved with a whisper. The 5th cracked open with a sound like a scream underwater. The 6th pulsed with light, and the corridor flickered. When it returned to normal, the walls had shifted, subtly, impossibly. We were not alone. I raised my rifle. "Ruth, too late to stop now." She reached for the 7th. The air thickened like syrup. My ears rang. Behind us, something clicked and scraped in the darkness. The final lock came undone. The hatch exhaled a long breath. Then it slid open, slow and silent. What lay beyond wasn't a room. It was a void, a chasm of black mist stretching downward forever. Floating above it, suspended like a corpse in water, was a shape. Huge, twisted. Eyes opened along its body, each one locking onto us. And it smiled. My knees buckled. Ruth whispered, "It knows you." From the void came a sound that wasn't sound, a command, a memory, a scream from before creation. I grabbed Ruth's arm. "We have to go." But she didn't move. She just stared and said, "It's beautiful." I dragged Ruth away from the hatch. She resisted at first, whispering nonsense. Names I didn't recognize, languages that didn't exist. Her skin was ice cold, her eyes wrong, like something was wearing her face from the inside. I didn't look back at the creature. I couldn't. If I did, I knew I'd never leave. Sirens blared. Emergency klaxons that hadn't sounded in decades began screaming throughout the base. Whatever we'd woken, it was spreading. We ran. Corridors bent as we moved, stretching in unnatural ways. Lights exploded, gravity shifted. The walls pulsed like living tissue. In the mess hall, we found Sergeant Keller and 2 surviving guards. Their eyes were hollow, uniforms soaked with blood. "We saw it," Keller said. "Didn't even fight. Just obeyed." I could hear it now too, a whisper in the back of my skull, a calling, promises in my own voice. Keller raised his rifle to his temple. "We're already gone, Lieutenant." I knocked it away before he could fire. "We still have time. We shut down the reactor, bury this thing for good." "No," Ruth said behind me, her voice deeper, layered. "You belong to it now." I turned, too slow. She lunged. Keller fired. Ruth crumpled, lifeless. But something slid out of her mouth, a black, glistening tendril, alive and twitching. We burned it. Then we ran to the reactor. But as we reached the core doors, the base groaned like a living creature. The walls bled, the floors cracked open, and from the fissures rose figures in tattered uniforms, those long dead. Eyes glowing, voices harmonizing in an ancient tongue, the ones who serve. Keller screamed, "They're not here to protect it. They're here to spread it." And then they charged. We ran into the reactor room, sealing the blast doors behind us. The creatures pounded on the other side, their fists rhythmic, ritualistic. The whole base vibrated with each strike, like a heartbeat. Keller jammed a crowbar into the manual override and turned to me. "We detonate it manually. Burn everything, even us." I stared at the core, glowing, unstable. It would take only one override to trigger meltdown, but we'd be trapped. No way out. "I'll stay," I said. Keller shook his head. "No, I will. I've got nothing left." Before I could argue, the door behind us cracked open. The creatures, dozens of them, oozed through like smoke in human shape. Their eyes glowed. They didn't run. They knew we were cornered. Keller shoved me toward the emergency chute. "Tell someone. Warn them. This thing. It's not from here." He turned to the console. I hesitated. Then I dropped into the chute. I slid down into darkness, the roar of the bass above me growing louder. Then silence, followed by a deep, distant thunder. The ground shook. I emerged a mile away through an old emergency access tunnel. The desert sky above was red with fire. Echo 9 was gone. I stumbled through sand and ash, alone. Hours passed, maybe days. I don't remember. Eventually, a rescue chopper spotted me. I told them the cover story. Chemical spill, base collapse, survivor. I didn't mention the creature, the servants, Keller's sacrifice. And now, I'm home. But I can still hear it sometimes, in my dreams, in the silence between thoughts, whispering, waiting. We buried it. We burned it. But I think we were too late, because now, something is whispering back.